unexpected encounters and, well, unexpected side of people's character. I've always had a soft spot for that kind of thing. From the moment I met my college student girlfriend, I was completely smitten by the contrast in her personality. My name is Mike. I'm 30 and work in sales for a real estate company. I reckon I'm pretty average, like anyone you'd meet. If I have one thing to boast about, it's that I apparently have a knack for sales. I'm not exactly the motivated type, but for some reason, I've always been at the top of the sales charts since I joined. Getting big deals is what I'm known for in the office. I'm not particularly passionate about my job, and to be frank, I'm just working to eat. When I was job hunting, I was already determined to go with the first company that gave me an offer. And it happened to be this real estate agency. So when they try to ask me about my company spirit, I can't really answer it. Tonight, I'm sipping on some liquor that I don't even like, listening to my boss about his company pride. It's one of those typical corporate dinners, entertaining the bigwigs who we're signing a huge deal with tomorrow. I was annoyed and wondered, why not just drink after we seal the deal? Inside, I'm seething, but on the outside, I'm all smiles. Guess you could say that's my special skill. By the time my boss was guiding the client into a taxi, saying hope all goes well tomorrow, I was wiped out. And now, I've got to hail a taxi for my own boss. What a pain. As I finally get a taxi, I stuff my boss inside and shut the door hard. He tells me, don't be late tomorrow. He's my direct supervisor, but he's not interested in the work's details. He just wants the credit and can't handle a deal on his own. Tomorrow's a competitive presentation, with a lot of rivals showing up. Feels more like I'm being used than relied on. Recently, I've come to realize that. I heave a sigh of relief as the taxi with my boss disappears from sight. I think of heading straight home and going to sleep, and I start heading to the nearest subway station. Despite it being a weekday, there's quite a crowd, and I weave through, trying not to bump into drunk folks. Fed up with the crowd, I opt for a less populated route, but that choice lands me in trouble. Someone help. Let go of me. I hear a young woman's plea for help in a dark alley. I instinctively turn towards the voice. I see a small-sized woman with glasses and a man, who looks like a playboy, having some sort of argument. The guy is pulling the woman by the wrist, dragging her towards an exit where a white van with its sliding door open awaits, likely his buddies inside. This looks like some crime scene for sure. I think about it, but honestly, I'm not keen on getting involved. As I'm deciding whether to walk away or intervene, I lock eyes with the distressed woman. The desperation in her gaze behind those glasses holds me. Without thinking, I find myself stepping between the man and her. I must have moved faster than I ever believed I could. Before I could think, my body just moved on its own. I guess there was something captivating in her eyes. Can't you see she's not into it? And are those guys your pals? This looks like a kidnapping. Isn't this a crime? My words seem to unnerve the guy, and he lets go of her arm. Sheltering her behind me, I tell the guy, just give up. To be honest, fighting isn't my strong suit. I really don't like confrontations or complications. Yet here I am, stirred into action by the intensity of her gaze. Back off, old man, or you'll get hurt. A guy spouting off words like some hoodlum on the street. Looking closer, he seemed like a college student. Hey, are these folks your friends? I turned and asked the girl. I've seen him around campus, but I have no association with him. She responded firmly. The guy momentarily looked hurt by her words. A tussle between me and him continued with shouts of let go and back off. Soon, the distant sound of police sirens grew closer. Probably, a passerby had seen the incident and called the police. Hearing the sirens, The guy clicked his tongue in annoyance. Just when I thought it was over, a heavy punch came flying at me with incredible force. I blacked out as I was slammed against a wall. The last thing I remember was that moment. When I woke up, I found myself in an unfamiliar room. The sunlight coming through the curtains. I felt a pain on my cheek, but my back was in even more pain. It seemed like I was on the second floor, with the distant sound of machinery coming from below. I recognized the nostalgic scent in the air. It was the smell of ink. Rising from the bed I'd been laid on, I checked my sore back. It appeared I had some scrapes. An old-fashioned clock on the wall showed it was 2 p.m. Oddly, I didn't feel panicky or desperate even though I was absent from work and had an important meeting that day. I absent-mindedly wondered who had taken over the crucial deal I was supposed to handle, but I quickly gave up on the thought. My cell phone, which was by the pillow, had a broken screen and seemed to be non-functional, probably from when I fell. Inadvertently, I had become that guy who loses contact on such an important day. My boss must be in a real panic. I said a silent sorry in my head for a moment and then let the thought go. I walked down the stairs, drawn to the sound of machinery. I found what seemed like a living area above a workspace. Judging by the number of dishes in the kitchen, I guessed maybe 2 people live here. Yet, I had no idea where I was. In front of me, there was a large machine with metal plates lined against the wall. I then guessed it's an old-fashioned letterpress printing shop, something I'd seen in books. Beside the machine, a tall man, wearing an apron made of sailcloth, was working. "Excuse me." I spoke hesitantly. He looked up, recognizing me, and gave a warm smile. "Ah, you're awake. You had quite a night. How you tried to help Valerie but ended up getting the worst of it," he remarked. He introduced himself as the older brother of Valerie, the college girl I had tried to help the previous night. Apparently, after I passed out, Valerie had dragged me to this place. That explained the scrapes on my back. He added with a slightly apologetic grin, "We probably should have called an ambulance." "Hey, can I borrow your phone? I need to call my office. I've missed work without notice." He casually tossed me his cell phone. The unlock screen displayed a snapshot of him and Valerie laughing together. They seemed close. The response I got after calling my workplace was a series of angry shouts. At some point, I felt like this is something I can't handle on my own, so I switched to speakerphone, letting the guy hear such a call. The man, who was a letterpress craftsman, introduced himself as Bob. To begin with, I was told to show up, and I replied yes, then hung up the call. Bob said, "That's impressive." Well, it was a big job after all. What kind of job allows you to get verbally abused? Doesn't make sense, he said, and then went back to his work. I did think he had a point. "So, you got fired." He operated the printing press handle with a loud clang. "Probably a demotion. It's such a pain." Regardless of arriving early at the office, the situation wouldn't get better. That thought made me reluctant to even go to work. After finishing his work, Bob invited me upstairs saying, "Let's grab some lunch." "Hey, is that guy all right? Still unconscious?" Then, a college girl from last night, with plastic bags from a drugstore in both hands, kicked the entrance door open. She probably had to kick it since her hands were full, but she came in quite energetically. "Hey, welcome back. This guy here is either getting fired or demoted because of you." Bob said that with a smirk, and his sister, Valerie, looked pale and dropped the bag she was holding. Then she glared at me. I was taken aback by her intense stare and straightened up, staring back. "I got it. I'll take responsibility. I'll take care of you. Don't worry." Valerie seemed to have a peculiar way of thinking. Bob was laughing his heart out. In the end, I reached the office just before closing time. As soon as I placed my bag on my desk, I was called into the boss's office. Inside, the supervisor, manager, and the CEO were all present. All of them frowned and glared at me. "Because of you, everything's been ruined. Do you realize the loss you've caused the company?" the CEO said in a restrained, angry voice. Both the manager and supervisor nodded in agreement. They probably didn't prepare or go through the documents that would have allowed them to handle the situation without me. They clearly wanted to put all the blame on me. Then the CEO handed me a transfer order. "You're being transferred." I was being sent to a quiet branch office, where only unimportant tasks are handled. "Oh, never mind the transfer. Please accept this instead." I quickly pulled out my resignation letter, which I had kept in my suit's inner pocket, and handed it to the CEO. It was something I had written at that printing shop. The CEO and the manager's faces turned pale when they saw it. There was a commotion in the sales department as their top salesman, me, said he would quit. It seems they planned to demote me temporarily and bring me back to the headquarters once everything's settled. My sudden decision to quit left them scrambling. "Well then, I'll be going. Thank you for everything." As I bowed slightly and tried to leave the CEO's office, the CEO shouted, "Hold him back." The supervisor rushed to grab my arm, leading to a minor scuffle. I was getting really fed up. During the struggle, a small message card fell from my pocket. It was made at the printing shop. As they taught me about the printing process, they made a business card-sized message card for me. Embossed with the unique impression of letterpress printing, it read, "I'll take responsibility, Valerie." Looking at the card, a smile crept on my face. "What do you plan on doing after leaving the company? You think other companies will match your current salary?" At the CEO's angered voice, I turned back and gave a bright smile. The sight of my smile left the CEO slightly taken aback. "I think I've secured a permanent job, so I'm good." I felt incredibly refreshed as I stepped out of the boss's office with those words. The next day, I visited the Taggart letterpress printing owned by those siblings. "Please take responsibility," I declared. Valerie, rushing out from the back of the workshop, greeted me with a salute, saying, "Understood." Bob seemed a bit hesitant, but he hired me as a part-timer, and soon I officially joined the printing crew. Bob had an artisan spirit and was a bit quirky. Yet, he's a good guy. You can tell he really cares about his sister, Valerie. Valerie is an unusually conservative college girl for these days. She doesn't wear makeup and has thick glasses, giving her a plain look. But as I worked with her, she surprised me. Once, when ink splattered on her glasses and she couldn't see, we all laughed at her, but when she took off her glasses, I was astonished. Her beautiful almond-shaped eyes were a bright hazel, framed by long lashes. "Do you really have to laugh that much?" she pouted. Her cheeks turned peachy, and she looked simply delightful. Lost in admiration, Bob whispered to me, "She's a beauty, isn't she?" Without realizing, I nodded in agreement, and then felt a strong thud on my back. All the folks in our family are stunning. Seeing Bob smirk, I couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. It felt embarrassing, especially since my gaze towards Valerie had clearly changed since she took off her glasses. It was obvious that he had noticed, and it was embarrassing. Then, an incident made me realize the truth of Bob's words. In the evening, Valerie returned from college, holding large paper bags in both hands. "It's my Halloween costume, for a college event," she said. When she returned after changing in her room, I was stunned. Is it weird?" she asked. There she stood, wearing a mini bright red Chinese dress. Her usually hidden legs caught my attention. Oh, are you interested in outfits like this? I was about to respond, but felt a pain at the back of my head. Turning around, I found Bob holding a rolled-up magazine. The likely culprit of my sudden headache. Valerie, it doesn't suit you much. Let's buy another one together later, Bob said, shielding my eyes and speaking gently to his sister. I murmured under my breath, "Protective brother." Of course, the next moment, I felt another thud on my head. Oh right, sorry, I didn't mean to show something so awkward. Valerie, blushing furiously, dashed to her room. Deep down, I wished I could have seen more. You're a fast learner, aren't you, Mike? Valerie commented as we both sat at the workbench, refining imported zinc plates. I'd often find myself admiring her hands even during work. Her delicate fingers meticulously working on the plates looked almost sacred and beautiful. If she didn't wear her glasses, many more would notice her charm. I've always been good with my hands. Even now, Valerie says, I'll take responsibility, with such sincerity. Bob would just laugh, and at first, I didn't take her seriously. But as the days went by, I realized something. She genuinely wanted to take responsibility. She's sincere, a bit clumsy, and slightly out of touch with the world. But all these traits made me fall for her, without even realizing it. One day, as the three of us were having lunch as usual, there was a feature on historical buildings in downtown New York on TV. I have a passion for historic buildings, and my only hobby on my days off is walking around to see them. As I started explaining the buildings shown on screen to the other two, Valerie leaned in to look me into my face. What's up? Sorry, was I being too loud? I thought I might have been over-talking, and I apologized to Valerie. She shook her head and stood up, saying, No, that's not it. Hey, what do you really want to do, Mike? Are you staying here just because I said I'd take responsibility? Confronted by her intense gaze, I couldn't answer immediately. I thought to myself that I shouldn't give a half-hearted reply. I'll think about it and get back to you. Upon hearing my words, Valerie sat back down, saying, All right. Mike, I know you hate overthinking stuff, but take some time tonight and really ponder about it. Even though Bob kept his eyes glued to the TV, his words hit me hard. That night, I went home and reflected on what they had said. I realized I had been living life without much purpose. It was the same with my previous job. I feel like I was just going for the motions, working out of habit. No real attachments or regrets. Even when it came to girls, I had an easy come, easy go attitude. What did I really want to do? I spread a notebook out on the table and began jotting down everything. Food I wanted to eat, books I wanted to read, things I wanted to do, and historic buildings I wanted to see all over the world. In no time, the pages were filled. I can't do all this, there's not enough time. I sighed, looking over the filled pages. Then suddenly burst into laughter. There were photo books of historical buildings on a shelf, which I hadn't paid much attention to. If I hadn't met those two, I might have spent my life simply sighing over the images in those books. After laughing heartily, I felt a weight lift off my chest. I'm quitting my part-time job today. The next morning, I announced this to Valerie and Bob right away. Bob, with a puzzled expression, remarked, You're always so unpredictable. Yet I could tell he wasn't mad. You figured out what you wanted? Valerie asked, and I nodded confidently. So, what's the plan? I'm going to see everything I've ever wanted to, until I'm satisfied. Valerie gave a delighted smile. That sounds wonderful. I explained to them about my plan to visit historical sites around the world. Bob was concerned about the finances, but I had some savings from when I worked at a real estate agency. If I run out, I plan to pick up another part-time job. Valerie, I'm sorry, I always teased you about taking responsibility. You don't really have to. I apologize, Valerie, for always teasing by telling her to take responsibility. I thought I should make sure to tell Valerie that she's now free. When I did, Valerie bit her bottom lip and looked up at me. She always makes that expression when she wants to convey something serious. You don't have to apologize, please don't. Instead, I just want to ask one favor. That's what Valerie said to me. It was the first time she had ever asked me for a favor, so I was taken aback. "Hut, a favor? What is it?" I asked hesitantly, and with a serious look on her face, she said, "Is it okay if I wait for you, Mike?" I thought, what a sweet request. "Hey, Bob, can you step out for a bit? I want to hug Valerie." Bob retorted, "You know my answer is no. Don't push your luck." It seems touching her is off limits until I return. I feel the day I'll be calling Bob brother-in-law is getting closer. As proof, even though Bob verbally says no, he's still smiling. If God exists, I truly want to thank him. Thank you for leading me to the sibling that day. I've traveled for 3 years and have seen much of what the world has to offer. But there's still more I want to see. I've been documenting my travels on a blog. And in doing so, I started getting interview requests and offers to write essays and columns for travel magazines. Now, writing for them has become my job. The rapid change still astonishes me. To keep my promise, I opened the doors of the Tucker print shop. "I'm back, sorry for keeping you waiting." Upon my unexpected return, Valerie was in shock. When she realized, she gave a big smile and saluted me. "I've been waiting for you. Welcome back." She ran towards me and hugged me immediately, and of course, I hugged her back tightly. So, what did you think about the story? Subscribing to our channel will motivate us to create more content. Well then, see you in the next video. I'm Ryan Sawyer, 28 years old. During my time in college, a friend and I started a small gaming company, and now I'm the CEO of the company. Our cell phone app game became a major hit, and before we knew it, our company expanded exponentially. I often think to myself how fortunate I am to have found success doing something I love. In fact, I've been lucky since the day I was born. I was born into a relatively affluent family and raised with love by my parents. Whether it was academics or hobbies, my parents allowed me to pursue anything I took interest in to the fullest extent. I really don't think I can thank them enough. Hey, Ryan, you're free for the drinking party tonight, right? Just as I was about to shut down my computer after checking my accumulated emails, the door to my office opened. Popping his head in was Tom, my college buddy and the co-founder of our company. Tom is the vice president of our company. Our positions as CEO and vice president were actually decided over a game. So those positions don't really hold much power. "Sure, I'll be there," I replied. When I responded, Tom playfully frowned and made a face as if he was not pleased. "You know, I kinda wish you wouldn't come. You always end up stealing all the girls." It's an old joke that Tom always makes during our drinking parties. Apparently, I'm considered quite handsome. And coupled with my high academic qualifications, tall stature, and high income, it seems I tend to attract attention. Sometimes, the gazes of women at these parties make me feel a bit uncomfortable. Don't say that. You know very well that my work is my sweetheart. I don't have anyone I'd call a significant other. I occasionally have dinner and spend the night with a few individuals, that's all. Tom often warns me that one day I'll get hurt, but that's just how I choose to live. The notion of romantic love has long left me since high school. Grabbing my cell phone, I followed Tom out of the office. I wondered who I'd meet today. That thought made me a little excited. This gathering of young entrepreneurs is a regular event. Although it's difficult to attend every time, I make it a point to show up as often as I can. It's a great place for us to exchange information. Moreover, many people bring along cute girls, making it a venue for new encounters. Today too, there were cute girls such as the executive assistant of a major trading company's CEO and a PR girl from a famous clothing brand. While everyone is enjoying themselves, I can tell that the girls are sizing us guys up. It can't be helped, considering the circumstances, but it also feels as though this approach wastes the potential of these encounters. If we could let our guards down and speak honestly, maybe some amazing chemistry could happen. With that thought in mind, I spent the evening making small talk with the girls. The first round of the party was decently lively, and a momentum was building to head to the after-party. I idly watched as the organizers debated in front of the restaurant on where to go next. "Hey, Ryan, Tom, let's make a quiet exit." The one who whispered this to me was no other than Ethan, the CEO of a major apparel company. A bit older than us, Ethan was the leader-like figure among young entrepreneurs. Even from a guy's perspective, he's a cool guy and I look up to him. I wouldn't dare to turn down an invitation from such a person. Tom and I exchanged glances and quietly slipped out of the group. "Just turn off your phones, it's less hassle," said Ethan, who was confidently walking ahead, as he looked back. "It must be to avoid getting searched for. As long as we turn off our phones, no one can catch us." I felt a sense of temporary freedom. The bustling streets on Friday night were lively. We threaded through the crowd smoothly and found ourselves in front of a certain building. It was a building that housed a members-only upscale club. I had heard rumors, but it wasn't the kind of place novices like us could enter. "Ethan, we're going in here. It's a members-only place." In front of the glossy black door stood a security guard in black, who deeply bowed when he noticed Ethan. Ethan, it seemed, was a member. That made sense to me. Ethan, being well informed, must be due to him frequently visiting such places and keeping his ears open to various stories. "I got introduced to this place recently and became a member," he said. "Apparently, you can get in if you're with a member, so Tom and I ventured into this unknown world." Inside, the lighting was cleverly dimmed, making the common interior design look even more chic. Beautiful women were seated at each table, engaging in low, whisper-like conversations with the guests. Just a glance, and I could spot faces of known CEOs and owners. It felt like a social gathering of the elite, and I started to feel a bit tense. Ethan, who seemed used to all of this, casually introduced us to the beautiful hostess. The elegant hostess said, "I'm happy to see young people here," and welcomed us warmly. Honestly, I've never been to places with girls. I've never been to a strip club. We were guided to velvet sofas, and immediately a girl came and sat next to us. She handed out a business card with her nickname on it, and I hurriedly started searching for mine. The girl found my confusion amusing and let out a little laugh. Ethan seemed to have someone in mind, as he looked like he was waiting for her. His slightly anxious profile made him look like a boy. "Ethan, thank you for always coming." A girl elegantly sat next to Ethan, saying this as she approached. Her slim shoulders were revealed by a navy blue dress that suited her fair complexion well. "Nina, we've kept you waiting. I've brought along some juniors today," Ethan said, introducing us to Nina. Nina bowed her head to us with a cheerful smile. Of course, Nina would likely be her work name, but it suited her well. "Nice to meet you, I'm Nina." When she raised her face after saying that, I caught sight of Nina's face and almost let out a surprised, "Oh." The person standing before me was my high school friend, Lisa Thompson. She looked different, but I was sure it was her. "Wait, Lisa Thompson, right? I tentatively asked. Nina responded with a grin, evading my question by saying, "Who knows? Perhaps it might be a nuisance to mention her real name here." So, I decided not to push any further. Nina is apparently a popular hostess at this club. Even after she joined us at our table, she was called to various others, busily moving around for greetings and send-offs. Despite the hectic environment, Nina never let her smile fade. She generously offered her beautiful smile to everyone. The woman in front of me was the exact opposite of the Lisa I knew. After all, I've only seen her smile once. The impressions were so far apart that perhaps I had the wrong person. By the time we were leaving, I had come to this conclusion. The high school library that smelled of old books. She, a library committee member, was always seated at the counter. Always expressionless, with a cold side profile. For some reason, I just can't forget her. In the end, I left the club without verifying the truth, being sent off with a broad smile. Ethan seems quite smitten with Nina, and on the way home, I was regaled with stories about her. Ethan, would you mind inviting me the next time you go to the club?" At this, Ethan looked a bit surprised. He knows well that I usually don't frequent such places, so it must have been unexpected. But he quickly smiled and readily agreed. From the bottom of my heart, I wanted to keep visiting the club until at least I uncovered the true identity of Nina. That day, I was confused as Nina and Lisa kept appearing alternately until I fell asleep. Ethan was kind enough to keep his promise with me. Over the weekend, he contacted me and we decided to go back to the club together. On this day, Nina wasn't there when we arrived as she was accompanying a regular customer. Ethan immediately called over the madam, introduced me politely, and suggested that I should definitely become a member of the club. I didn't expect him to go that far, and I was deeply touched by Ethan's kindness. The madam also agreed to my membership, saying, "If it's Ethan's recommendation." In this unexpected situation, I gained a status at the club. I was torn about whether or not to tell Ethan the truth. While I was contemplating, Nina appeared with a regular customer. Nina, in a simple dress, reminded me of Lisa from our high school days. Nina quickly disappeared into the backstage for makeup and a costume change. I unconsciously followed her retreating figure with my eyes. Ethan seemed to notice it. "If Nina is your objective, give me a break. I can't win against you," Ethan jokingly said while laughing. But I noticed his eyes weren't laughing. He must be serious about Nina. "Don't be ridiculous. She's way out of my league," I replied with a laugh. Ethan muttered in a small voice, "I don't know." We chatted with the substitute girls while drinking until Nina was free. All the hostesses at this high-class club were amazing. Each one was a skilled conversationalist and had a variety of topics to talk about. There was no way they'd let us, the customers, get bored. Moreover, each of them had the beauty and style of a model. I was almost distracted. While I was chatting with the substitute girls, Ethan's phone rang. He was about to hang up, but his complexion changed slightly when he saw the caller's screen. "I need to take this outside," he said, and left the club. It must have been an important call. The problem was that I was left alone. This was only my second time visiting a place like this, and I was left feeling out of place, unsure of what to do. Ethan returned after about 5 minutes, but apparently some problem had occurred at his company. He said he had to return to the office immediately and left the club reluctantly. Just before leaving, he told me that he had paid for everything that day. Just as Ethan left, Nina came to my table. "Sorry for the wait. It's your second visit, right? Thank you so much," Nina said with a smile as she smoothly replaced my glass. Sure enough, I saw glimpses of the Lisa I knew. When the helper left the table and it was just Nina and me, I decided to ask her directly. "You're Lisa, right? The one who was on the library committee in high school?" Instantly, Nina's smile faded from her face. "It's a mixed blessing to have good intuition and a good memory, Ryan," she said. There was Lisa, the girl I knew so well. Even with her makeup done beautifully and dressed up in a dress, her cold side profile was the same as before. I felt a little relieved. "I wonder why I can't ask why," I said. The Lisa I knew was a top student in school. She was the kind of student who was expected to receive a scholarship for university. But according to Ethan, she had dropped out of high school and was working hard. "Please don't be interested in me. Don't interfere with my work because of your nostalgia. That's a meaningless emotion," Lisa said while avoiding my gaze. Then she raised her hand towards the waiter. "Please take him home. Thank you." Just like that, I was forced to leave the club by Lisa. Just before the elevator door closed, she smiled and said, "Don't ever come back," making me feel her rejection. That night, I had a nostalgic dream. Lisa was sitting at the counter in the high school library. "What are you reading?" At first, I spoke to her casually. I think it was just a greeting for me. Lisa glared at me with her eyes turned up. "Are you borrowing, or are you returning?" Lisa asked me, without any hint of a smile, in a businesslike manner. It was the first time a girl I had approached had reacted so unsociably, and I was a little surprised. Looking back now, I think I was an annoying guy with an excessive self-confidence because I knew I was popular. I, who had no books to borrow or return, was at a loss for words. Then, as if she was disgusted, she sighed and dropped her eyes back to the book she had been reading. It felt like I was being ignored, and it annoyed me. "As a library committee member, don't you have any recommended books?" I persistently called out to her. Looking annoyed, Lisa looked up at me and placed an in-service sign on the counter. "What kind of book are you looking for?" She came out from behind the counter and asked me. I, who hadn't thought about anything, hastily repeated, "A book you recommend." Then she disappeared into the aisle of bookshelves. In less than 2 minutes, she had found a book. "This is my recommendation." The book she handed me was a paperback titled Stories of Thoroughbreds. When I took the book she offered, she went back inside the counter. No facial expression during the lending process. I think I was just fixating on things like the whiteness of her nape when she looked down, or the line of her join profile. This is how my interactions with Lisa began. Even though she told me she didn't want to see me again, I can't help but be concerned about Lisa. I wonder why she became a hostess, why she dropped out of high school. If there's anything I can do to help her, no matter how small, I thought I'd like to be there for her. After some thought, I decided to call the madam and request to come in with Nina. Nina wouldn't be able to refuse if the request came from the madam. It may seem a bit sneaky, but it couldn't be helped. As I expected, I received a return call from Nina. "This is Nina. Thank you for coming with me." Hearing her obviously fake cheerful voice, I was taken aback. She decided the place and time for our meeting as if it was a business call, and then hung up the phone. From the beginning to the end of the call, Lisa had been Nina. I felt a bit down, thinking maybe I was just causing her trouble. But even while feeling down, I was excited to see Lisa, and my work for the day went by swiftly. I was amazed at my own raw emotions, but I couldn't suppress them because they were my honest feelings. When I spotted her waiting for me at our meeting place, I felt like I could burst into dance. I was purely, simply happy to see her. "Sorry, did I keep you waiting?" When I checked the time, it was 10 minutes earlier than our agreed meeting time. "No, I just got here," she responded with a radiant smile as Nina. The next moment, all expression vanished from Nina's face. Perhaps my confusion showed on my face. Nina gave a slight smile, lifting the corners of her mouth just a bit. Do I need to keep up my business smile? It's not free, you know. She was sharp and sarcastic. The old Lisa was there. I felt more at ease with her now than with Nina's fake smile. When we entered the private room of the Vietnamese restaurant I had reserved, Lisa seemed a bit more relaxed. She didn't need to act like Nina when we were out of the public eye. Especially not in front of me. I was surprised to think we would meet again in a place like that. I started, to which Lisa responded, it was an unfortunate coincidence. I started working for the money. It was the quickest way to make some, Lisa said, her face blank. She acted as if she was prepared for me to dig into her roots and ask questions today anyway. She shared what had happened since I had graduated high school. The fact is, Lisa and I have been in contact for less than a year. It was when I was a senior and Lisa was a freshman in high school. We hadn't been in touch since I graduated. Lisa's dropping out of high school was apparently due to her father's disappearance. He found a younger woman and abandoned his family, Lisa said bitterly. Her mother, who was brought up like a princess, had been married against her parents' wishes and was a woman completely incapable of living independently. Lisa was the one who supported the family, had lost the mainstay of the family, and could not rely on her grandparents' home. She had 3 younger brothers, it seems. In order to support her mother and 3 brothers still in compulsory education, she decided to drop out of high school and work. Initially, she held several part-time jobs. Her brothers also helped out with the household finances, doing things like delivering newspapers. Lisa said that her mother was too busy lamenting to be of any help. As soon as she turned 18 and could work in the nightlife work, Lisa jumped into this world. It started from a casual bar. Then she was headhunted by the madam of her current workplace. Have you got all your answers now? I was surprised too, to find out you've become a CEO, Lisa said, finishing her story and gulping down her ginger ale. I think I'm just too fortunate. I always feel insecure, not knowing how much of what I've achieved is actually due to my own abilities. Oddly enough, the anxiety that I hadn't been able to express to anyone fell out of my mouth. Lisa looked at me with a surprised expression. Sorry, forget it. It's just my ramblings. Embarrassed, I tried to play it off as a joke. Listening to complaints is also part of my job. It's not for free, though, Lisa said with a gentle smile, which I didn't think was her usual business smile. It was the smile of Lisa that I had seen only once during our school days. Then we chatted a little bit about the old days, I think. In reality, my head was so messed up that I don't remember what we talked about. But just before we entered the club, Lisa said something that stuck with me. Look, I'm not ashamed of who I am now. I just don't want people who knew me in the past to see me as I am now. I feel like that's disrespectful to the people at the club and to the customers, but I can't help feeling that way. Before I could say what, Lisa forcefully pushed open the door of the club. A subdued buzz, punctuated by quiet laughter, came from inside the club, accompanied by jazz music. The dimly lit floor and the scent of expensive whiskey. As soon as Lisa stepped foot into the club from the door, she transformed into Nina. She looked at me with a full smile. Please wait for me at the club. I feel like drinking champagne tonight, she said charmingly before disappearing into the backstage. The bartender gave her a smile, saying she knows how to get what she wants. Huh? Yeah, I guess so. All I could do was return an embarrassed smile. It felt like everyone had some kind of inner contradiction that they couldn't fully come to terms with. It's been a few weeks since I started going out with Lisa. I've been wishing to visit the club often, but work has plunged into its peak season. Both my team and I have been pulling all-nighters. I'm in no shape to go out, devoid of energy and motivation. Finally, things settled down yesterday. Just as I was about to see Lisa after a long while, I got a call from Ethan. "Man, I proposed to Nina yesterday. I haven't gotten a response yet. I don't have the courage to go to the club alone. Can you come with me today?" I was surprised at his uncharacteristically timid voice, but I was also shocked by what he said. I never thought he would seriously consider being with Lisa. "I've spent a lot on Nina. I don't think she'll refuse." Ethan said that. No doubt, there's no customer who has spent more on Nina than he has. But just because of that, I felt like he was taking Lisa for granted, thinking she couldn't refuse. "I have something to tell you that I've been hiding." I thought I couldn't deceive Ethan any longer. Of course, I had no intention of deceiving him from the beginning. I just couldn't bring myself to say it. "I have a bad feeling, but let's hear it." Ethan probably had a hunch. His voice tone dropped a bit as he said that. He probably invited me to the bar today as a countermeasure against me. "Nina and I have known each other since high school, and she's the one I've always had feelings for. I don't want to interfere with your proposal, but please give me a chance to." I thought it was rude to say such a thing to a mentor I deeply respect. But there are moments in life when you can't back down. "I've often heard Nina talk about you." "I see, so that's what's going on," Ethan said calmly, showing no anger. "And he said he would give me a chance." "It's Nina's decision, who she chooses. If she chooses me, don't complain. I won't either." "Thank you." Ethan, whom I respected, was fair and manly to a fault. He told me to go to the club first and confess my feelings to Nina, and I was on the verge of tears. We hung up after agreeing to meet at the club. Over the past few weeks, when I couldn't see Lisa, I've been preparing something and headed to the bar. The bar, just opened, was still sparsely populated, and when I asked for Nina, she came to the table right away. She seemed a bit thinner than the last time I saw her. "Long time no see, Ryan. I thought you'd forgotten about me," Nina, with a fake smile, said. I asked directly, "Are you going to accept Ethan's proposal?" The hand she was using to make the whiskey and soda stopped. I saw her fingertips trembling slightly. The sound of ice falling into a glass resounded in the silence. "Not a bad deal, you know. He's rich and kind. He only has eyes for me." While not looking my way, Nina proceeded to mix herself a whiskey and soda. "I've got money too, you know." I almost despised myself for the vulgarity of the words that came out of my mouth. At my words, the fake smile disappeared from her face. Nina looked at me, her eyes challenging. "I'm willing to pay whatever it takes. Marry me." She looked at me with contempt after I uttered the same phrase again. Then, slowly, she took off the ring from her right hand and placed it in front of me. An expensive-looking diamond ring. I remembered the boastful way Ethan had announced it was a gift from him. "I come with a high price tag, you know." Lisa's mouth twists into a self-deprecating line. I realized that I had hurt her. But I couldn't back down here either. I handed her what I had prepared. "I might not have as much money as Ethan, and we've only just reconnected, but I want you to look at me again. Just like before, I want you to recommend books to me and teach me about worlds I don't know." As she saw what I had handed her, her eyes widened. It was an information guide for the high school equivalency test, a pamphlet for distance learning, and a brochure for online universities. The last was a brochure for a course to become a librarian. She carefully placed each pamphlet on her lap, one by one. Her slender fingers traced over the covers of the pamphlets. Maybe it's time for you to chase your own dreams. I want to see you achieve yours. If we're talking marriage, I think I'd be the better bargain." Back in high school, I once asked Lisa, who served on the library committee. In theory, the library counter duties were supposed to rotate among committee members. But whenever I went there, it was always Lisa sitting behind the counter. "I love this place, so I switch duties with other members. I want to be a librarian in the future, so consider this my practice," she said. I still remember when Lisa, who was usually expressionless, shyly shared her dream with me. "You still remember that? You're strange." While she uttered the words with some bitterness, Lisa's eyes were glossy with tears. "I don't know why, I couldn't forget. It's strange, even to me, but I've always liked you." I thought I could finally confess to her after over a decade. I had planned to confess to her on graduation day. But she wasn't in the library on the day of graduation. I couldn't meet her, so I remember leaving a small note on the library counter and leaving. "I'll tell you I love you when we meet again." The words I muttered were the ones I had left in the note for her. The fact that she remembered those words was more joyous than anything. I felt as if the stop clock had finally started moving. Years later, I stood in front of a large library. It was a chilly day, cold enough for snow, and I could feel the cold creeping up from my feet. The staff entrance opened, and light spilled out. "Sorry to keep you waiting. You must be cold." Lisa took both my hands, blowing warm breath on them. "I'm okay," I replied, holding her hands and tucking them into the pockets of my coat. "It's warm when we're like this." Lisa smiled shyly and nodded. The smile that was now directed at me wasn't for business. Feeling like the luckiest man in the world, having her priceless smile all to myself, I cherish this moment. My name is Mike. I work in sales for a clothing company. My performance is about average, earning a decent salary. My life will always be the same. And I believe the same for today. Delivery for you. That day, I was delivering items like bandages and disinfectants to a small orthopedic clinic. The receptionist was supposed to come and get them, so I just left the big cardboard box at the front desk and planned to head out. Ouch! I accidentally let the box slip from my grasp, dropping it right on my left toe, and the pain was immediate. Though the box was heavy, luckily, nothing fragile was inside. I first checked the products for damage, but then... I tried to stand, but couldn't. The pain was too intense. Seeing this whole incident, the receptionist looked concerned. "Are you okay?" "Just for my pride," I replied. "I'm fine," in which I honestly wasn't. Removing my sock, my toe was already red, and I figured it'll bruise horribly over time. I thought of icing it, but could barely move without limping. "Need help?" The receptionist had alerted a doctor. The clinic was nearly empty as the consultation hours were almost over. The doctor, who was a lady, looked worriedly at me. "This might be fractured. Let's get an X-ray. Fill out this form and hand over your health insurance card." Her efficiency was assuring. The pain and the possibility of a fracture scared me, so I complied. Turns out, it wasn't broken but had a minor crack. A moment's inattention can lead to lasting pain, as they say. She prescribed painkillers and a few follow-up visits. I was pretty bummed. But this is how I met my wife, Arya. The circumstances of our meeting were embarrassing for me, but Arya is truly a wonderful person. Beautiful, kind, and a doctor. Yet, she's sensitive, gentle, and sentimental at times. I fell for Arya during my regular clinic visits. Soon after, we began dating and eventually got married. Whether it was our family meeting, or our wedding, or even on our regular dates, her emotional side often showed. People always assume female doctors are strict, but you never did. That's what made me happy," Arya once said. Sure, with her long hair and piercing eyes, she might seem stern. And indeed, during work, she is a strict person. But work and personal life are separate. Our life under the same roof had its ups and downs, but overall, we had a good marital bond. However, in our 5th year of marriage, things took a turn. The trigger was the death of Arya's father. He was already an elderly, and Arya had somewhat braced herself for this. After getting the call, Arya and I headed to her parents' house. Arya's family home is so far away that we have to take a plane. While on the plane, I reminisced about my father-in-law. Arya's dad came from a long line of doctors, and I remembered that he had his own privately run hospital. I'm not very familiar with all these things. Well, this is because Arya doesn't like talking about her father. But I know he was a very strict man. When we get married, I was suggested, or rather, ordered by my company to see if we could make a business deal with him. When I approached my father-in-law about it, he got pretty mad at me. Private practices like ours value networking. Just because you're married to my daughter doesn't mean you can barge in on that. Thankfully, Arya explained to him that I was forced into it by my company, which cleared up the misunderstanding. She said he's old-fashioned, and that's why he values relationships. That's probably why he was able to run his clinic for so many years. But all things must come to an end. When we arrived at Arya's family home, we prepared for the funeral. The funeral progressed without any issues, and soon we were left to head back. But then, I was suddenly called out by Arya. "What's the matter all of a sudden?" "Well, they just unsealed my father's last will and testament," Arya explained, looking down. It seems her father had considerable assets and named Arya as the sole beneficiary. It's not surprising given Arya's an only child. However, the problem was that the inheritance included her father's clinic. Before, my father told me I couldn't inherit his clinic because he thought I wasn't ready or capable enough, and that was why it was hard for me to talk about my family. The reason Arya works at another hospital and didn't take over her family's practice was not just because she couldn't, but she wanted to earn her father's approval. Tears streamed down Arya's face. I thought, no matter what I did, he'd never recognize me, but in his will, he left the clinic to me. He said, "It's up to you now. I want to look after the clinic." Those words weighed heavy on my heart. I knew she wanted her father's approval, but commuting from our current home to Arya's family house was impossible. If Arya took over the clinic, we'd have to move, and I'd have to quit my job. I understand how you feel, Arya, but I can't give you an answer right now. I have my job and built my own networks back there. It won't be easy just to say I quit and expect everything to be fine. Moving to a place where I don't know anyone, finding a new job, and living with my mother-in-law who's now all alone, made it hard for me to respond immediately. After all, my mother-in-law is also at the point in her life that will soon require some care. It was a lot to consider, and honestly, I hoped Arya wouldn't take over the clinic. But at the same time, if it was for Arya, I also wanted to support her decision. What? Me? A department manager? The next day, as I was heading to work as usual, I was stopped by my boss. Apparently, he had recommended me for a department manager position. But I haven't produced any exceptional results. True, your performance is average, but your retention rate for new clients is the best. This means you consistently bring in profit. I've never been interested in promotions, so I didn't compare my results with my peers or seniors. It turns out those with impressive numbers to have many new clients, but not many of them keep repeating. They all seem to have the plan, throw enough mud at the wall and some of it will stick. While I have fewer new clients, almost all of them become repeat customers. And this was the reason for my promotion. I was overjoyed. I might not be interested in climbing the ladder, but that doesn't mean I lack the desire to seize the opportunities in front of me. For the first time in my life, I was genuinely excited about a job opportunity. I bet that's how Arya felt too. I couldn't let my selfishness ruin Arya's career. So, during my break, I called Arya and discussed the promotion. Sorry, honestly, I can't move there. I talked to the boss, and there's no branch there. If I transfer, the promotion might be off the table. Well, if that's the case, it can't be helped. After discussing, we decided to prioritize our careers. Essentially, we chose to go our separate ways. Of course, I love Arya dearly. But this isn't like a temporary work assignment. We'd be working in different places without any plans to return. Carrying on a marriage in such conditions would be pointless. So, we decided to divorce, but there are no regrets since it was a mutual decision out of respect for each other. Fast forward 20 years. In that time, I went from a regular employee to a supervisor and then to a department head. Being single does feel lonely sometimes, but without a family to worry about, I could immerse myself fully in my work. Having my first team and being in a leadership role was thrilling and made work so much fun. Of course, Arya and I still keep in touch. Once a month or once every few months. We chat about work and life updates, so we've managed to maintain a good friendship. I thought it would always be like this. But until. Breaking news, there was a significant earthquake just a moment ago. While having lunch at a burger shop, my eyes were glued to the TV setup in the place. Apparently, there had been a massive earthquake, equivalent to magnitude 7. The news quickly reported on the areas that felt the most shock, and Arya's town, where her hospital was located, was one of the hardest hit. Arya. I tried calling her immediately, but didn't get an answer. No matter how many times I dialed, there was no answer. Although I did go back to work temporarily, I was too distracted to do anything. Sneaking a peek online, I found some helicopter footages of the affected areas. Arya's region was severely damaged. I rushed to inform my workplace and managed to get a week off. Thankfully, I had a great team who understood and supported my decision. I headed straight for Arya's place. It took a while, but I finally made it to her hospital. But no, this can't be. Arya's hospital was completely destroyed. The building that once stood there was gone. Overwhelmed, I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face. Memories of Arya flooded back, and I couldn't help but scream out in despair. If I kept Arya by my side, would things have been different? If we had moved here together, could I have protected her? Endless what-ifs consumed me. But no matter how much I cried, Arya was gone. Mike. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed, and I turned around. Arya was looking at me, looking absolutely worn out. It's not a mistake, Arya is definitely there. I was so overwhelmed with joy that I stood up. Arya, Arya, oh thank goodness. I ran towards her. Although Arya looked ragged, she didn't seem to have any major injuries. Why are you here? I flew over here out of worry. Saw the news about this area on TV, but when I arrived, the hospital was. Saying that, Arya began explaining, looking sad. On the day of the earthquake, Arya had been visiting her mother's and father's graves. Her mother had passed away the previous year, and it wasn't even the anniversary of her death. But Arya continued, you might find it strange, but I just felt the need to see my parents' faces. Now that I think about it, maybe they were calling out to me. Apparently, Arya was caught in the disaster while visiting the graves and luckily escaped unharmed. However, with so many injured, the disaster-stricken area was chaotic. That's when Arya, an orthopedic surgeon, headed to a large hospital to help. It's not settled yet, but volunteers have been coming to help. I also came to check on my home." Arya looked sadly at the hospital that had collapsed. "All the effort I put in after taking over from my father, it's all gone now." Seeing Arya with a face of despair, I tightly hugged her. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you during these tough times." "You don't have to say that. At the end you came to see me, didn't you?" As Arya said that, a tear trickled down her face. I faced her. "I'm so grateful that you're alive. I thought I'd never see you again, and I cried for the first time in a long time." "Haha, I'm glad your tears are still doing its job. Mine, on the other hand, feels like it's completely drained." Arya wiped away my tears. In the past, I was the one wiping away Arya's tears. How the tables have turned. Looking at Arya again, I saw her face drained and weary. Of course, she had lost everything she had built up till now. We'd have to think about the future. I knew that such matters should be approached rationally so that both of us would be satisfied, but at that time, I was too overjoyed by the fact that Arya was alive and couldn't stay calm. "Arya, how about coming back to me?" "I'm not forcing you, but I regretted it so much earlier. I should have been with you. I was filled with so much regret. That's how much you mean to me. I don't want to feel that way ever again." Saying that, Arya responded, "Yes, I also want to be by your side again. You came to save me when I was all alone. I don't want you to feel lonely either." And so, Arya and I decided to get back together. But that doesn't mean we can just start afresh immediately. With Arya's family home destroyed by the disaster and many still injured, the presence of a doctor is crucial. "I'll contact you once things settle down." "Got it, I'll prepare on my end too." And so, we separated again, promising to reunite. 1 year later. I never imagined I'd come back here, and I certainly didn't think I'd be able to start my own clinic. Arya returned to me and even started her own clinic. The name was carried over from her father's hospital. In her heart, it might have felt more like a relocation. By the way, the startup funds came from my early retirement package. Actually, the company's performance had been poor for the past few years, and they were looking for early retirees. I was pondering what to do, but with an added bonus to the severance package, I decided to use that money to build Arya's clinic. So, this clinic is co-owned by both Arya and me. But all I could do was procure necessary equipment and some basic clerical work. Also, using the connections I had from my job, I managed to recruit some clerks and nurses. According to Arya, having been away from this land for so long, your connections really helped. There aren't many orthopedic clinics around here, and it quickly became popular among the elderly. It's thanks to you that I could start over. Truly, thank you. Thank you for being by my side. You never know what life will throw at you. But even if I'm told my life ends tomorrow, I want to be next to the one I love. I don't want to have regrets like before. Even though we are just an old couple, you can always restart your life anytime. I want to keep walking along with Arya so that when we look back, we can say it was a good life.